Okay, welcome to a live stream today. We have really not much on the agenda. I just thought, now that we've had the newest update for about a week, that we could recap a little bit, see how everybody's feeling about it, talk about some general tips and tricks in Logic, and perhaps answer some questions if we have any questions. We'll see. This is a new time. I'm experimenting with some different live stream times. I feel like around noon Mountain Standard Time where I live is probably the best time, but we're just experimenting with a little bit earlier one. And I did some experiments last week with some later times, and it was certainly a little bit slower. But perhaps we'll get some more of the people who are perhaps overseas in Europe or other places around the world. This may be a better time for some of you. So we'll find out, and we'll just kind of play it by ear and see how it works. That being said, as you're coming in, one thing that I'm asking is that you let me know if you've updated to the newest version and how that's going for you, because I'm curious. I'm curious about how that works and how it's working for each of you. And so that's kind of the goal of some of these things, is just to work as a community, make sure everybody's getting what they need, and answering questions and troubleshooting, etc. So far, this update, the 10.7.5, is, and if you've seen any of my other live streams or watched them after the fact, you'll know that this has been working really well for me, and I haven't had any major issues. I have a few instruments which aren't working, but those, ironically, were instruments that I got after the fact, after I upgraded, so they're not ones that I'm relying on. For instance, let's do, well, let me think about that for a second. Let's do the plugin manager, and you'll see most of my stuff is successfully validated. There's a couple. KQ Dixie, I'm not surprised that 2 of those failed. That's an iPad app. It's not even really designed for the desktop. And then you'll see some of these down here from Roland, the Roland Cloud. So I'm not able to use Juno, and I'm not able to use the JX3P or the System 8 or Xenology. And so that's it. So everything else successfully validated. And I was actually really surprised by that in some ways, because I have a few pretty esoteric, maybe. I have some pretty specialized plugins, these ones from noisemakers, and I haven't updated these in a while, or they haven't had an update in a while that I know of. I should go look. But they've been around for a while, and they didn't update, but they worked great. So cool. But it was some of the Roland ones that have currently thrown me for the biggest loop. And that's not to say that none of them work, but again, I got these after I'd updated to even 10.7.5. I'm working on some videos about these instruments, and we're going to do some stuff with the Roland company at the university, and so we're making some efforts to expand a little bit. I like the Roland instruments. I mean, I love having the actual company-approved TR-808 and 909, although we have those samples recorded in a lot of different places. Okay, so there's a question in the chat. Did something in my playhead turned blue, and I have to click 2 times if I want it to play? 1 time is just moving it. I couldn't find out how to fix it. Blue playhead. And if you're watching and know what's going on, obviously, with any of these questions, I'm curious, let me see one thing real quick about this with the sync button, if that's the sync issue or not. Yeah, so does it look like that right here? The blue playhead like that? If that's it, then make sure your sync is just turned off. So you're on internal sync instead of one of the other syncs. So that's the only thing I could think of for that issue. Is just making sure you're not syncing to some external expectation. Let me know if it works. And in fact, the new thing with sync, of course, is that we can do Ableton Link. And so this is going to allow you to link up with other software that uses Ableton Link. And it's a really cool tool. It's one, I haven't messed around with it too much, but I'm going to be, because I think that it's kind of fun to be able to have some additional options for syncing up with other people. So that's pretty cool. Yeah, so just turn that off. It should be fine at that point. I've used sync a few times with Logic, specifically SMPTE with MIDI timecode. There was one project a few years ago that had been done like half in one workstation and half in Logic. It's like Nuendo and Logic, and it was like a hour and a half or 2 hour project, all in one project. And they had started working in 2 different workstations at different sample rates and different, it's like different bit depths. Logic wasn't doing 32-bit, and it's just like all of this stuff. So in order to get the 2 workstations, in order to get one project out of these 2 things, instead of just bringing everything into the other workstation, which would have taken days because there were so many files, it was a film, we just sunk them up with MIDI timecode, and it worked really well. And so that technology is still useful, even if you like look at it and think, why would I need that or want that? Oh, I'm gonna change. Just notice one of my MIDI controllers is sending data into Logic. I'm gonna unplug it for the moment. I've got, I was doing some demonstrations yesterday with some of my classes. This is the Touche. I think that's how you say it. From Expressive E. I love this thing. It is so good. It's incredible. I was also showing my students the Hornberg, which is the HB1. This is a breath controller. This thing is beyond amazing, like amazing. And it's way too much money for most people. It's like almost $800 or $700 right now. But really cool device. It lets you do a lot of breath control things. If you've ever had a chance to mess around with this thing, it is so cool. Let me plug it in. So not a big display here, just like one basic display, and you could go through all your parameters and change them. Most of the time, I'm changing CC, the one that whichever controller is going to go to, and then release. I need to find my neck brace for this. It's like a harmonica holder, but you can play. You can have it just sit right in front of you, so you can blow without having to like hold this with your mouth. When you have to hold it with your mouth, it gets certainly a little bit more annoying. But let's do a quick duplicate of that track. New track, duplicate settings. It's going to load the orchestra real quick. This thing is so good though. Let me get set to the right CC. We're going to set it to expression on 11. Everybody needs a really good breath controller, I think. Man, that thing is so good. There's a lot of settings you can adjust on it, and a lot of things you can do with it. It's really cool. Not a sponsor, obviously. Cool. So one problem solved. I'm working on this song, and so we'll do some little tips here for a minute. But I maybe before we jump into some of the things I was going to talk about that. One of the last times I did a live stream, I was having some audio issues. It's one of the few issues I've had with Ventura. The whole thing, it's like I love the new system preferences and I hate them simultaneously because nothing looks familiar and it always takes me just an extra few minutes. And they're not even called preferences, they're called system settings. I was thinking of Logic. Logic changed their preferences to settings as well. Ugh, annoying. But the whole thing with the preferences or the settings for the system, now it's supposedly looking a lot more like it does with like iOS, right? But if you're not used to where things are, it's going to take some time to get used to it. But I was having some issue with my audio, and it just restarted everything after I was done with the stream, and it all worked fine after that. So it's just like that's the kind of glitches we're having. It's ones that you can't actually solve. You just have to like get lucky or restart, and hopefully it fixes it. But you know, that's one of the trickiest parts with it. But I was going to say we do have, and this was going to show last time, the beat tape, which made it into Logic now, and this came to GarageBand iOS like a month or so ago. So it's not like a brand new thing. We saw it coming. I saw this on another video that someone was saying these were new. I'm not even convinced. I can't find really a list of things when you go to look at, what's new in Logic Pro. I haven't found anything that actually says that those were released this time in this. And if I did, I'm looking at this, the beat tape. Let's do just a quick search on this page. Beat tape. Yeah, it doesn't even have it listed anywhere. And this is going back to, well, this is just the basic one, I guess. Let's click on the other one too. Let's do window or help, release notes. So this will just be the 10.7 page. And so it's like they're not telling, either it just came out but they're not telling us or whatever, but they're not listed anywhere on those notes. So but I've seen other places, and then I just saw the GarageBand update, and it said that this one, the beat tape and the modular rhythms were new. So I'm assuming that these ones were the new ones in Logic as well. And it's like a lot of stuff, It's like, look at how many kicks we just got, and snares, rim shots, snare 1, 2, and 3, all these hats, cymbals, toms, claps, shakers, percussion, and then general effects, right? And if we did this with the beat tape, you'd see a number of things here as well. So maybe a little bit fewer, but cool. It's like always great to get new sounds. Do we need those? No, but I mean, they're cool to get. Bitumen, welcome back. Just hopped in. I haven't had the same muted auto glitch since I mentioned it on the last stream. Cool. That seems to be how it's like, just restart. Everyone, don't forget, if you're having issues, your first step is just to reboot everything. If it's still happening, then there's something else going on. With the Logic library, how do I get to open up the library for electronic drum kits? Is it DMD for the settings on new software instrument, or is there another way? Thanks, boss. I knew, yeah, DMD, Drum Machine Designer, for those who don't know. So for your question, are you asking just for like the electronic drum kits that Logic has in its library? Is that what you're referring to? Because I mean, my brain immediately was like, ooh, electronic drum kits. Like, are you talking about hooking up like an external like MIDI drum kit or something? But if you're just talking about like specifically, you know, the different electronic drum kit. Oh, never mind. I just answered my own question. If I'm looking at the library where it says electronic drum kit, and I click on one of those, it pulls open the DMD. So if you click on any of these electronic drum kits, it's going to just pull it up into a DMD, and then they're here. And you'll see that we have, just looks like that. Particular one I loaded, the Clicks and Sticks, just has 1.5 pages worth of samples. Like that, so you can go test them out. You'll notice when I click on them, if I have the library open, it shows you, it pulls you to where they are. And so you could always, like, you know, add more if you wanted to. So if I click this like empty spot and I'm like, ooh, let's do a shaker 808 flex, it's gonna load that up into that spot. And then you can solo it, mute it, you can change the MIDI note. You can also just learn it if you don't want to have to figure out which one it is. You can do an output as well for that, but then you also have the ability to make exclusive groups, close that library, you can resample the pad, you can update the name and kit piece, assign a track icon, or just clear the overall thing. So a lot of like power in each of these, but a lot of them, you just choose the empty one, you can go to the place you want and find it. Now, for instance, this is something that came like about a year, I think it was like a year or so ago, where you actually could filter your library by the sound packs. This was something we were missing. We kept on getting all these new packs and couldn't find any of them. They were like impossible. We have this issue with a lot of things in Logic in terms of its search function. At least now we can do this, but when they released the producer packs, I think is when they added this functionality, because they were like, we're making a big deal out of these 7 producer packs that you're getting. And then I went to like look and I was like, how do I find this? And they had added this functionality, but I didn't even know about it. But it's like, you know, you click on that, you can load the electronic drum kit onto this track, and it pulls that up. Cool. And then you can go through and change all of those things. Let's go back. Back up to here. Yeah, so then we could also go through and see the other things that are in these packs, which, you know, sometimes are like a piano. Some actually cool stuff with some of these. Yeah, but those you just click on. Even with the kit pieces, if you just load one of the kit pieces, it goes into the quick sampler or whatever it's attached to. But if we're in, you know, one of the full kits and we open that up, so let me see how easy this is. So we're looking at the Uptown Flow. This is where it gets a little tricky because I wish I could pull one of those kits a little bit easier in that same way, but it's a little trickier because now all of a sudden it takes me into a different file structure when I click on one of those. And it's hard to maybe get back to the exact same place. But let's do this. Oh, I didn't want to close that. Let's click right there. So now we've got our kit pieces. I've got the selection there. I'm going to choose this one. Ooh, it just loaded the whole thing. So that seems so annoying. A go-go funk. I wonder if, let me undo that. If I have this open, I click on this and I type a go-go funk. So that's that one. It will load up. No. Yeah. So it's hard to get those individual pieces in there. Let me see if anyone else is. Okay, cool. Keisha is saying, hi, what's a great way to import battery kits into DMD, redo them all over? I don't know the answer to that question. Okay, cool. Sounds like there's some tweaking to be done here still. And I kind of feel the same way. I think that a lot of times it's like so close to being perfect. Let me drag, I can't drag any of this over there, but wow, I can't. Oh my gosh, this is almost comical in that sense, but it's like, oh, it's like that one go-go funk just wouldn't load, but all the other ones did. So that's a glitch on that one. So the low and the high ones work in there. But the go-go funk one didn't. And maybe that's just because it's a different type. But it's like I select it and it's not even letting me select it. Yeah. There's a lot of ways to do all of this stuff. What are you asking about, multi-musician? About what follows the plus? Yes. So, Bitterman, that's totally true. And I think that the actual, the logic remote is super nice when you want to trigger some of these things. The latency is actually really manageable. So you can trigger the drum files. And I do notice a little bit of delay, just a little bit, but it's pretty minimal for most things. I find that when I'm going into actually recording, it's just a hair longer than it should be in order to get like a really great performance. So I end up using the step sequencer more often than actually playing those in the record thing. Cool. So the functionality. So first of all, I was just having this conversation with someone last week, but the functionality of sampling and triggering samples in Logic is, I think it's one of the best of any workstation out there. I think it's, in many ways, don't hate me for saying this, anybody, but I think it's better than Ableton, and Ableton's always been the best in terms of that kind of content creation and music creation. I think that certainly none of the, like Pro Tools can't do anything cool with sampling. Cubase and Nuendo, not really. FL Studio maybe is a real competitor here in some ways, but it hasn't been updated, any of that functionality, in like a decade at this point. I think Logic is really one of the best. And by that, I mean, like, it's like whatever I want to do with files, it's so easy to do stuff. I can just pull, I'm just going to grab an Apple loop for the sake of this, but rhythm box. Let's pull it over down here, and I can easily make it a quick sampler, original or optimized, a drum machine designer, 3 different algorithms in Alchemy, or just a sampler. So right off the bat, there's so much I can do with this, and it's gonna like analyze all of those trigger points, and we can perform all of those. It becomes a whole new instrument. We can take a file that we just recorded, or we can record directly into this, turn it into an instrument, convert a quick sampler into a full sampler, add layers, all of, I mean, it's like every functionality in terms of sampling, it's so easy to do. I think that if you're doing any sort of rhythm-based production, I mean, Logic is so good with all of this stuff. And so I think it's a really powerful way to work. And it's easy. Once you get into like a workflow, we were sitting in one of our studios on campus last week. And what we had, it's like we're in the vintage synth room. And we just like pulled up a few synthesizers. They're like pre-MIDI, some of them. And so you just like play like a scale, record them into Logic. And then I just drag that file onto like any one of the sampler options, and it turns it into a fully playable instrument version of the synthesizer we recorded. It literally took like 10 seconds, you know, to like tweak it out, and it did like looping of the audio files. It put everything in the right zones by pitch. It like analyzes them. If you're not happy with that, you can like redo that or adjust it. You can turn on the flex functionality, and it doesn't just speed up the samples and you go in the high range. It actually just pitch changes, but leaves the timing all the same. It's so good and so easy that it's like, why wouldn't you be doing more of that? In fact, I think I want to start a series on this channel where it's like one day a week, I just go around the house and sample stuff. And then we turn it into usable sound packs. You know, it's like, it's so easy to do it. It's like sure, it's great that Apple every once in a while gives us new sound packs, but it's so easy to like make custom sounds on your own, and they're super usable that why wouldn't you, you know? Keisha asks, is there a way to make offline bouncing faster? I think it should be faster on a Mac Studio. Whew, that's the question of the hour, isn't it? So I did a test. I referenced this in one of the last videos I made, but I did a test where I compared this version of Logic with the previous version of Logic on essentially the same computer specs, and the offline bounce. So when I hit Command B, that pops right up. And the older versions, it takes like a second or two. It's actually, that part has gotten faster. If I now do the rest of this, so I'm just gonna hit OK. Just double checking, so it's offline. Before I do this, let me open up my CPU usage here. And you'll see what happens. I'm gonna click OK. Save this as a throwaway file. Delete me. I mean, the answer is it could be faster, but it's not. I mean, I've been looking at the same speed of export for like my whole life in Logic. And look how many of those threads are like flying right now. Granted, it's not like slow. I can't even, it wasn't that long ago, it feels like, that Pro Tools finally let people do offline bounces in the first place. I mean, for years using Pro Tools, it's like every export was a bounce. And every engineer I talked to would say something like, oh, this is really important. It gives you a chance to like listen to your project to make sure it's okay, right? Right, makes it so you can listen to your project. Do you know how many of those engineers still do real-time bounces now that they have offline bounces? I bet you like very few of them. I mean, they were just like making up weird excuses for that, but this is let's see how long this song is. That's about a 5-minute song. I mean, it didn't take that long. It didn't take 5 minutes, so I think that it has gotten better. It's using a lot of the threads. My hard drive is fast, so it's not an issue of that, even though it looked like it was maxed out. That could be what it was, though, is that it's still maxing out the drive I/O, but it's like, it just goes a little bit slow. But it's faster than it used to be. How's that? Let's try one other quick test just so you can see perhaps something. I'm going to turn off all but 4 of my high performance cores, right? We're going to go down to 4 cores. Delete me number 2. Can I tell you a secret? I mean, maybe it's using the other cores under the hood, but that's like a similar export speed. The drive one is maxed out, the 4 processing threads. I mean, could it possibly, I mean, what is happening? Something is here that somebody else can explain that I don't have the answer for, but that export is approximately the same amount of time. So maybe it's using more of the cores underneath the hood and it's just not showing us. But that somebody else would know the answer. I don't have the answer for that. Let me check the comments. Is there a way to automate filter envelopes that exist in plugins, like the envelope that exists in the modulator? Filter envelopes. Also, what mic would you recommend for recording samples in real life? Is it possible to spend around $100 and avoid background noise a little better? So let me answer that question first. I mean, get like a nice handheld Zoom recorder. Those are great. If I do a series on my channel, I'll probably use my Zoom recorder for it. And Bitterman, don't worry about your terminology. It's like, I'll get it or I won't, but we can always figure it out. In terms of the other question, is there a way to automate filter envelopes? Now, most of the time, I can't think of a specific example of where I'd want to do that. Let me show you when I'm doing things with envelopes. I almost always use something like the Touche when I'm just doing a custom filter control, so I'm not necessarily worried about the envelope as much. I did that in this song quite a bit. Let me play this and you'll hear one of these, this one right here. It's this track with the retro synth. And now I know that this is real. Let me go back and find where that is. It might be here. Yeah. And I know that there was time, but I'm here, and I'm near. So I wrote all that automation not by hand, but I recorded it separate from the synth. If I was doing this, and let me load up just like that's a beast. Let's do a new instrument track for a second. And I'll load up that same retro synth for a moment. And we have the envelope here, the filter envelope, right? So theoretically, this is one option of something you could do. But if I wanted to use something like the modulator and control the plugin parameter of the attack, right? So you can see I can use the modulator to control the filter envelope on the actual instrument itself. I'm not sure if that's exactly what you're trying to do, though, because the envelope only really engages when you're triggering the note. So this could be useful, for instance, if I'm doing, in addition to that modulator, an arpeggiator. That means every note is getting a little bit different of a filter envelope when it gets triggered. So it comes up with a really cool sound. Let's see. Let's go slower. So now I'm reading your next comment. This is very close. I'm wondering if you chose to record, press a note down, and then press A to open the automation, if it will show you the modulator effect and its movement in the region. I don't think so, even with the new feature here. So let me, let's do this. Let's record MIDI track to here. Let's solo this for a second because I've got a big project here. And let me try this. It may work. I know that some of this data does not transfer over. And so you'd have to do it a different way to get that to work. So let's double click and let's see if what of that data came through. And you'll see down here, nothing. So that did not come through. And that's because even though with the new feature of recording the effects, only like real common MIDI data goes and not control of plugin parameters. That isn't to say it's not possible, although it may not be possible because that data really doesn't have, it's not exactly part of the MIDI spec. They're doing something custom with it as far as I can tell because it doesn't record in situations like this. And so the direct correlation, it's got to be some form of MIDI, but it's like, a special, program control or system exclusive message or something that they're doing under the hood. And so we can't exactly record that into any of our MIDI data, which is kind of a bummer because I think that I would actually use that functionality if I could. And allow you to tweak it from there. Yeah, so I understand. It's like I'd love to be able to tweak it. It's just not one of those things. Okay, let me see. XV5080. Let's do it. I'm going to get rid of these other effects though. So let's do Rolling Cloud XV5080. And the 5080, if you've ever used one of these in person, which I have, is a great module. I would say for the most part, the 1080 was one of my very first external sound modules. And then we looked at the 5080 that was right when the software was getting more, but so it certainly takes one thread all the way to the top. I can hear a little bit of clicks and pops. Now, I am, at this very moment, running my I/O buffer size at 32 samples. I don't move that very often. I do move it sometimes when I hit an instrument that is too much for a single thread, but I almost always run a 32 just all the time. And I did hear a little bit of clicks and pops in there. I mean, that thing is certainly pushing it a little bit for sure. I don't know if there's a way to do like something. I'm definitely hearing clicks and pops, and that is just from being a 32 buffer. So let's take this up to like a very usable 128. And now it's like below 50%. That one goes up higher, but let's see. Turn off the ARP. Yeah. So I'm not maxing it out. It's not crashing. Okay, try playing with the rest of the music. There's two ways to do this. One of them is, of course, let's do, okay, so I need to reload this real quick because I just started using my breath controller and I don't want to keep on using it. So let me just reload it real quick. Cool.
I turned around to see the things I never had. I feel the changes everywhere in the air. You feel the change and look so sad.
Don't even remember what key I played that. Let me go a little bit to the end where there's more stuff happening.
City of Elmwood is requesting all possible assistance that can be rendered for help.
And now I know that this is real enough for me. But is this real enough for you? Close enough to the truth. And now,
Yeah, it's working fine. I haven't noticed any issues. Make sure you're on the latest version of it. I mean, I just downloaded this last week, so unless there's been an update since then. JV1080 is one of the greatest sound module banks ever made. It's like so good. I mean, there have been some pretty amazing records in a very short window of time when it was popular that were made with that thing. And so Fleetwood Mac, I mean, did like an entire album with that once, it seems like. I mean, some really good stuff. So the Roland Cloud, if you don't have the Roland Cloud, go find a JV1080 like on eBay and use it. Okay, a couple more things and then I'm going to be out of here. So Bitterman says, so I found something. If you go back to the software instrument, click on, highlight that region, press A, go to automation. You can select the automation type, defaults to volume, but I was able to find 10 different options. Okay, so yes, that's true, but it's different. The data that comes out of the modulator is not going to be able to be recorded exactly. Sure, we have all of these things, but these all sculpt the data that's being created, but it doesn't sculpt the actual it doesn't house the output of the data. And the data we're looking at when I was doing that thing was where it says 2, and you learn a plugin parameter, and so it controls the plugin parameter of anything on the same channel strip that's further down the chain. It has to be below this in the chain, and it can control that, but it doesn't actually, that data that gets sent out to control that doesn't get written down anywhere that you can edit it, as far as I've ever seen. Now, I'm ready to be wrong as soon as someone finds out how to do it, but I've never been able to figure it out. But it is fun. You can mess with those and change those. In fact, you could put 2 modulators or 3 modulators in a row, have the first modulator controlling parameters on the second modulator, and having some of the second modulator parameters control the third modulator. You can do some really interesting things that will change over time. I mean, you can come up with some really cool sounds that way for sure. Bjorn, I agree. If you have the Roland Cloud, you don't need the original JV1080. It's, it's like I've heard people. I just had this discussion with someone the other day who said to me, the DX7, for instance, it's like you still need the original hardware DX7. I said, no, I don't think I need the DX7 anymore. I use some virtual versions of this, one of them being the KQ Dixie, which is a mathematical clone of the DX7. And it's like, I don't know if I have on this computer, if this is it or not. As long as I can turn off the effects, because they added some effects here. Let's see. Delay off, filter off. Let's see if I can turn it off. Feedbacks. So this is the bass number 1 from the original DX7. That was used by like Quincy Jones, with Michael Jackson, everything to Rick Astley with that famous song. It's like, that's the bass patch, right? Mathematically the same because it was created using all of the algorithm patches. And it sounds awesome. I use this whenever I want that sound. But someone tried to convince me I needed the full DX7 because of the digital, the DACs on the output of that sound special. Like the actual having the keyboard there, so you get the conversion to analog on the outputs of it. And I'm like, yeah, I mean, it's probably going to have a slightly different characteristic, but do I want a DX7 around all the time? No. It's like, I want to have like a plugin that sounds exactly the same. Let's see. Keisha says, last question. Best way to use Contact without maxing out Logic. That program is a monster. I stopped using Contact a few years ago. I used to be an avid fan. I had the complete pack all the time and kept it going. It's like Reactor is probably still one of the most powerful. I don't even know if Reactor is still made incomplete. Someone who has it may know, but it's like I loved the creativity of that stuff. But they were one of those companies that every time there was an update, they were like always behind, and it was buggy, and it like the upgrades always seemed to cost a fortune at that time, and so I stopped using it. But it always has issues. I hear more people complaining about Contact and other Native Instruments things in terms of performance than any other piece of software. Everyone's always wondering if it's updated for the latest version of the software for like operating system. It's like, I gave up. I'm done. Keisha says, sorry, last question. Are plugs breaking with Ventura? Some of them are. I've heard from people. The M1. Ooh, the Korg M1. The answer is I have the iPad version of the M1. So I have the Korg app. I don't think that app works. Let me see if it's working at all right now. Because a lot of those apps, some of them are sneaking through onto the Mac OS. Where was I using that? Is that in Gadget maybe? It's not, that's not one of the ones that's slipping through, by the way. So you can't use it on the Mac right this moment. So a lot of times I'll load up my iPad, use the IDAM protocol, so it sends MIDI to the iPad, the audio comes back into Logic. But I wonder if there's an expansion with the Korg Gadget, which is available for Mac OS. So you could find it there. That's theirs. I mean, they've released a version of it, so it's still the best. Great conversation. You in the chat are doing awesome. It's awesome. I gotta go. We've been streaming about 52 minutes. It's a little bit lower group, smaller group than when I do it at noon. I probably will keep on doing the streams at noon Mountain Standard Time. It's just after 10 a.m. here right now in Denver. But I'll be trying to do more of these streams on a regular basis, just because I know a lot of people want to get in and talk and have this conversation. So look for more of these. I'm going to try to find like a regularly standard time, like 3 times a week, maybe in the middle of the day. But thanks for everyone who's on here. We're going to pull the plug on this and go about our normal business. Talk to you all later. Thanks for being awesome in the chat.